The adage goes, nothing worth having is easy or free. That is true of love. Love, like all things, has a price. For some, the price of love is nothing more than their time. Perhaps the mundane work of sorting through misunderstandings of the heart, or navigating the conflict of dissimilar personalities. For others, the price of love can be profound. A commitment of all their energy, time, resources, and strength. Love can be a fire that warms us, but like fire, so too must love consume to burn. This is neither right nor wrong, it simply is. It is its nature. Sometimes, the price of love is suffering. Thus was Amecia de Rune's love. Her love for her brother Hugo knew no caution or restraint. Amecia's love was a protector's love, a love more akin to a mother than a sibling, and it burned fierce and bright. Amecia endured much suffering for her love, endured it with Hugo, beside Hugo, and in Hugo's stead whenever she possibly could. Hugo's destiny was one of violence, heartache, loss, and suffering. His blood would allow him no peaceful life. His path lay through shadow and death the likes no child should know. Such was the burden of his blood, his destiny to be the carrier of the prima macula, a curse older than civilization itself. Amecia, resolute, possessed of will and conviction, chose love over peace, and chose the price of suffering. And suffer she did, as everyone in A Plague Tale's grim world does. It was unavoidable in that dark time, in that horrible place, with the 100 Years' War raging, with the cruelty of men who carry out their careless violence and bloodlust behind the veil-thin shield of the commandment of kings and the dogma of the Holy Church. And over it all, the virulent, consuming touch of the plague. Hugo's own dreadful curse manifesting in sickness and rats ravaging the land and everyone they touch. Before their journey's end, the trauma and scars on Amecia's psyche are piled high as the corpses the brother-sister duo encounter with horrific regularity. Amecia bears witness to so much death, destruction, and disturbingly macabre events, both surreal and mundane, that it would leave anyone traumatized and half mad. All this before her own personal trauma. Amecia loses all she holds dear. Her home, her family, and near every friend and companion that she meets. Her world is dashed upon the jagged rocks of the world's cruel indifference, and every form of safety and security that Amecia has ever known is stripped bare. She endures terror and injury, loneliness and isolation, uncertainty and abandonment, even the weight of blood on her own hands as she is forced to kill over and over again in defense of her brother and herself. Indeed, one of Amecia's heaviest burdens becomes the sheer number of lives she has put an end to, how easy the act of killing becomes, and the savage pleasure she takes in striking back at those who would do Hugo harm.
Oh, if you want! This is my ground now! This is where they die! Oh yes, come then! Show me how you'll do it! That's all you've got? Come on! Whoa! You're just scared! You have to drive fear into them! Yes, follow me! Good dog! Stop! Just a kid that's killing you! You're dead! You're goddamn dead!
We bear witness to the toll all of this takes on Amecia time and again as she struggles onward through every challenge and obstacle in their way. And through it all, she is possessed by a feverish desperation to keep her brother safe. A love that knows no logic or reason, no caution or restraint, fully willing to burn in the consuming flames of that love and all it demands. For Amecia, the sacrifice of her body, her mind, her very soul to keep Hugo safe is an acceptable price. Hers is a desperate, selfish love, a love pure and unyielding, standing defiant against all the evils and terrors of man and nature alike. And as long as Hugo lives, as long as she preserves the sputtering, struggling flame of the love they share, Amecia perseveres. For the scant warmth of that flame is all the indomitable girl needs to warm herself just enough to struggle on. Guts is called the struggler for a reason. From the very moment of his abhorrent birth, he has suffered and he has struggled. Guts has experienced so few moments of kindness and joy that even the simple pleasures of everyday companionship are a gift to him, something that sustains the man through many a dark day. And if simple companionship is precious to Guts, then love, real soul-felt love, is a treasure he will stop at nothing to preserve and protect. When at last Guts found this love in Casca, she and his love of her becomes the one thing he will sacrifice anything to keep safe. One would assume that Guts' price of suffering is violence, physical conflict, and the endless horror of the apostles and demon hordes of the God Hand. This is, of course, true. But for Guts, the struggler who has spent more time with a sword in his hand than most men will ever know, danger, threats of death, and the ceaseless struggle of battle is of little consequence. The cost of Guts' love is more personal, more intimate than the clashing of swords or the doling of death in which he is so familiar. Protecting and watching over Casca is a constant torment. Casca's mind is broken, shattered by the trauma she endured during the eclipse, and she knows no one, not Guts, not even herself. She's a specter of the woman he once knew and loved so fiercely, a shell of her former self. Every day he rises to see her thus, broken and changed forever. Seeing her so diminished is a wound that opens anew with each day, to see what she is now and remember what she was once. Yet he cannot abandon her, cannot allow her to be further mistreated and trampled underfoot by a world full of darkness and hate. There are other wounds tied to Guts' love for Casca and his refusal to step away from her. The loss of his entire world during the eclipse, the companions he so valued all snuffed out. The betrayal so great and terrible it haunts his nightmares. The branding of his and Casca's flesh, marking them forever to be sacrificed on the altar of his once truest friend's endless, terrible ambition. Perhaps worst of all, Guts' love cost him his chance for vengeance. To get to Griffith would mean challenging the God Hand head-on, descending into the most foul, violent recesses of hell, a place Casca could never go and survive. For love, Guts chose to set his righteous vendetta aside. For love, he tempered the terrible darkness within him. There is sufferance in this decision, for none could doubt that setting aside his revenge for such incalculably foul wounds as Griffith had inflicted upon Guts' soul pained the warrior greatly. Yet in stepping away from his path of vengeance and instead choosing to protect Casca, Guts found growth, healing, companionship, belonging, and love. For a man who had been born into suffering, despair, and the certainty of death, this was the closest to a balance between the light of good and the crushing darkness of the world around him he would ever know. At the end of it all, Amicia came to a horrible choice. Hugo was lost to the macula. After too many hurts, too many traumas, too much grief and heartache, Hugo was consumed by rage, sorrow, and terror. As the terrible curse awakened to its full devastating potential, Hugo sat on the precipice of destroying the entire world. Amicia, who fought with every breath to protect Hugo, at long last had to face a terrible truth of love that she had been raging fiercely against for the entirety of their journey. Sometimes, love's price of suffering is letting go.
Amicia, we're here.
I know.
Both Amicia and Guts experienced love that took a heavy price. For them, there was little recourse, for to live without that love would have meant living in a world of unbearable cruelty without the single solitary light guiding them through. For Guts and Amicia, love was their meaning, their great purpose, to sustain them beyond all the trials and challenges of an uncaring world seemingly bent on the annihilation of all that is good and pure and worthwhile. Love consumes, but it also sustains. To ask for love without pain is folly, but for Amicia and Guts, for me, and perhaps for you too, that pain is worthwhile, if in the bargain, we may have love. Life is an inescapable hardship, and we will find many great sufferings we must endure. No one person escapes this life without tasting pain. Let it then be for something. Let it be for love.